Hello and welcome to my channel. I'm John Peters. I've been a therapist for 25 years and I started this channel to share a wide variety of wellness tips and thoughts from a therapist in case they would benefit you. Thanks for joining me. And in today's video, I am going to do a book review for Hardwiring Happiness, one of my favorite books. I'll tell you why I like it. And I know that I can ramble a little bit in some of my videos, but I'm going to make this short and sweet, get to the point, tell you why I like it and why I recommend it. Okay, so in today's video, I am going to talk about Hardwiring Happiness by Rick Hanson. And this is a book that I recommend. It's in my top 5 books, I would say, of all time that I tend to recommend to patients. And I recommend it for 2 reasons, each of which would be a good enough reason for someone to buy the book and read the book. Okay. Um, and let me just say about Rick Hanson, the author. So Rick Hanson is a long-term meditator and a cognitive neuroscientist and an author in the field of so-called positive psychology. He has some other books worth reading, including Buddha's Brain and Just One Thing. And I'm going to do some additional book reviews of his other books that I like as well. But in this video, I'm talking about Hardwiring Happiness. And when I recommend it to patients, I am often recommending it for 2 reasons. And that is the first unit in the book, the first 3 chapters, I believe, are hands down the best explanation for how we humans are fundamentally wired to be anxious and to have brains that grasp onto the negative and that allow the positives often to sail through. And he doesn't just talk about that conceptually and then kind of leave you on your own to kind of work out, okay, so I know that, and what am I going to do about that in my life? He talks about it in very clear, accessible language that even a non-cognitive neuroscientist can understand. You know, the book has some interesting, intricate details. So, you know, like for me, a cognitive science nerd kind of guy, I can be satisfied by it. But somebody could read it without a science background and easily understand exactly what he's talking about because he's aiming to the lay reader, right? But he talks about how humans are just fundamentally wired to be anxious, and how he talks about it, and this is why I recommend it for that first part of the book. He gives an explanation that actually translates into better self-understanding so that you go from being someone who knows you're anxious and knows you're having negative attitudes and thoughts at times to someone who knows how that's working for you in a way that gives you handles to then start to shape it to improve it, right? So it's one of those self-help books that's not just fluffy. And I'm not a rose-colored glasses kind of guy in general anyway. I want practical advice, and that's why I try to give practical advice. But this book does a really, really good job of empowering you as the reader after the first like 3 chapters to really understand how anxiety is working in your system and how you can work with it to improve it, right? So the second reason that I recommend this book, and again, this alone, if the first unit wasn't there with those chapters that I just talked about, this would be worth reading too. He talks in the main part of the book about his idea that he calls taking in the good. And the short version of it basically is Hanson saying, look, we naturally have moments that are good, both good in kind of a direct, like, oh, I'm enjoying this moment, but also good in deeper ways too. Like, oh, I helped out a friend yesterday. And now that I think about it, I'm really satisfied that I was helpful because it's good for me to be of service, right? So anything from the more so-called superficial to the deeper versions of good. Hanson talks in this book about how to really understand and work with those moments in our life when they naturally occur and to expand them so that they are much more impactful, both in terms of our just ongoing experience of ourself and how we're trying to be in the world and how we're getting along in the world, but also how those things are landing on us in ways that are constructive and that we can incorporate them into our life. And again, he's not a fan of like affirmations. Like, let's put up a poster on the wall and it'll just say, be courageous. He acknowledges that that strategy doesn't really work because courage isn't a compelling experience when we look at the poster. Maybe the picture's sweet and maybe we want to be courageous, but he really talks about, how do I get the goodness in my life that I truly value, that I truly want to experience more of? He gives lots of explanation about very accessible, practical, reliable ways to incorporate that into how you are working with those good moments that happen, so that over time, if we think about a pie chart of good, neutral, and negative, right, you expand the good slice of the ongoing pie of your experience, right? And he does this again with very accessible language, giving lots of explanation about how to actually practice reliable, practical strategies to achieve this end. So, again, those are the reasons this is one of my top books that I have recommended and continue to recommend to people. And I'll put a link down in the description if you want to go check it out. Highly recommend it. Absolutely one of the best books that I have read in the last 25 years as a therapist who wants to get resources like this to recommend to my patients, excuse me, but also as a person. I'm a human being too. And I want to be able to improve my life as well. And I would have to say this is a book that I have found personally valuable and that I have actually gone back to reread because of its value. So thanks for joining me. If you like this video, hit the like button below. Feel very free to subscribe to the channel. And I will see you in an upcoming video.